Annalyn Wheeler, and I am the dealer principal here at A1 Toyota. With me today is my husband, Stephen Wheeler, the original dealer operations manager, and my son, Daniel Wheeler, the current dealer operations manager. Missing today are my son, Stephen Wheeler Jr., the new company president, and my brother, Anthony Velarde, the other stockholder. On behalf of all my family and our 108 hard-working Connecticut employees, I am honored to welcome you, Governor Lamont, Mayor Elicker, Commissioner Dykes, and distinguished guests. We are proud to be chosen to host you here at our dealership as the dealership with the most electric rebate submissions in the state of Connecticut. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank each one of our employees for this notable achievement. It is fitting that this event should occur during this month as we celebrate our 60-year anniversary as a Toyota dealership. Our business is family owned and operated, and now into the 4th generation, we are the 5th oldest Toyota dealership in the country. It is my pleasure now to introduce DEP Commissioner Katie Dykes, who will guide us through the press conference.
Well, thank you, Annalyn. It is an exciting day to be here as we are announcing a major step forward that Connecticut is taking to improve our access to clean vehicles, electric vehicles here in our state. Today we are announcing that DEP is moving forward to issue the notice to start off the public comment process that will lead to the adoption of a set of regulations that will enable us to ensure that we reach 100% new vehicle sales from electric vehicles by 2035 for passenger vehicles, as well as for the first time putting in place regulations that will ensure that our medium and heavy duty vehicle sales are trending to be more electric and clean vehicle types in the 2030s. These percentages, the regulations that we're going to be moving forward for medium and heavy duty vehicle sales, that includes dump trucks, semis, garbage truck type vehicles, a whole range, will provide for different varying percentages of new vehicle sales that need to come from these clean vehicle types by 2032, from 40% to 75%. But it's estimated that this change will reduce pollution produced by diesel-powered engines from medium and heavy-duty vehicle classes by 90%. This is a really significant change as medium and heavy-duty vehicles account for as much as 53% of nitrogen oxide emissions, which are a key component of smog, despite the fact that this vehicle class only comprises 6% of our on-road vehicles. It's so exciting that we are doing this announcement today here at A1. I just want to thank our friends at A1 Toyota for hosting us today. They are such a perfect location to announce these initial efforts to increase our new vehicle standards because they've been a leader in embracing electric vehicles, and they're a leading dealership in implementing our cheaper vehicle incentive program. A1 is the only dealership in Connecticut to have won our EV Champion Award twice, in 2014 and 2022. And Toyota, we know, is one of many vehicle manufacturers that has made significant commitments to deploying more electric vehicles. They have a goal to achieve 3.5 million EV sales by 2030, and they're introducing 30 EV models by that time. And they're just an example of so many manufacturers across the country that are making the shift to provide for more clean transportation options, and we're really proud that by adopting these regulations here in Connecticut, we will have the opportunity to ensure that Connecticut drivers have greater access to those vehicles here in the state. It's no secret that we have some of the worst air quality here in the country. And we, at the same time, we are also impacted by climate change. We have certainly been seeing the firsthand impacts of climate change this summer, from wildfire smoke from Canada to torrents of rain that have damaged our roads and swollen our rivers. I think we just saw this morning, this is the 5th wettest July on record this year. So it's so urgent for us to move forward with tackling these emissions, especially because the transportation sector contributes 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions produced here in the state of Connecticut. We cannot meet our goals to do our part to reduce emissions and slow the pace of climate change if we do not reduce emissions from the transportation sector. And a big part of the solution is offering more electric vehicle and clean vehicle options for Connecticut drivers. One of the things that, so I do want to note that you know, Connecticut drivers are demanding these vehicles. We've seen a really significant increase in the number of people driving EVs. Our most recent review of DMV registration data shows that as of the beginning of this month, there are now 36,000 active EV registrations in Connecticut. This is a 20% increase from January and at least a 42% increase from last July. So consumers want these vehicles. They're more affordable than ever, in part because of incentives we'll talk about in a moment, both at the state level and federal tax credits under the Inflation Reduction Act. So we're really excited that these regulations that we're putting in place are going to help accelerate the availability of these vehicles in the state. One of the key questions, you know, when we surveyed consumers about, you know, what their interest in EVs, one of the barriers that people often cite is they're worried about range anxiety and where they'll be able to plug in, how they'll be able to charge these vehicles. I'm really excited that we have today our new Deputy Commissioner, Karen Kitsis from the Department of Transportation. DOT has been doing amazing work in helping address range anxiety and build out a charging network across the state that is prepared to help make it more convenient than ever to drive an EV. And I would love to invite the Deputy Commissioner to say a few words.
Hi, good morning. I'm Karen Kitsis, as was said, Deputy Commissioner with Connecticut Department of Transportation. It's really great to be here. I'm really excited to get to be here with the Governor, Commissioner Dykes, and local, state, and federal officials and advocates to celebrate the progress we're making here together in reducing greenhouse gases. We applaud today's announcement because, as we know, and it has already been said, transportation accounts for the majority of the emissions. The Connecticut DOT is looking to tackle this head-on. We're developing strategies to reduce the amount of miles traveled by Connecticut drivers by 5%, or about 400 miles per person by 2030. We're continuing to transition our public bus fleet to fully electric, no emissions models by 2035. And we're working on our own fleet of vehicles and trucks to be electric, hybrid, or equipped with technology that allows them to work without idling. We're installing smart traffic signals and roundabouts to also reduce idling in communities large and small across the state. In addition, we're making infrastructure improvements that will improve accessibility and mobility. For example, sidewalk upgrades, bike lanes, faster trains, more frequent bus service. These important investments are happening all across the state. Over the next 5 years of the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program, Connecticut will receive approximately $52 million in dedicated formula funding. We're working with different state agencies and stakeholders to roll out a program that creates a convenient, reliable, fast charging network across the state. We've identified corridors along our major highways as part of that effort. As Connecticut DOT seeks to make these improvements, it's great to be surrounded by supporters and advocates who are all working together to improve our environment by reducing greenhouse emissions. Thank you, Governor Lamont. Thank you, Commissioner Dykes, for your leadership and vision. And thank you to our state and federal delegation for your continued support. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deputy Commissioner. And you know, I love that we're making this announcement today in New Haven because it really is reflecting not only our commitment to address climate change, but also to advance environmental justice and equity. New Haven, among some of our other large cities here in Connecticut, unfortunately ranks among nationwide as one of the asthma capitals of the country, where it's really challenging to live with asthma. And that's notwithstanding all the amazing work that this city has been doing on providing cleaner transportation and transit options. The air that's blowing into our city is already out of attainment with ozone standards, and our transportation sector is contributing and exacerbating those ozone and smog impacts because of vehicle exhaust. And when many of our cities where we have communities living adjacent to major transportation corridors, those impacts from air pollution are even worse. And that means that these same communities are going to disproportionately benefit from implementing regulations like what we are doing today. We know that just our analysis of adopting the medium and heavy duty standards shows that we will be able to save Connecticut residents up to $270 million in avoided health care costs by 2040 just by adopting these standards that will help reduce air pollution and reduce emergency room visits and other health burdens associated with respiratory illness that's exacerbated by poor air quality. So I'm really excited about what today's announcement means, not just for better access to cars that are fun to drive and lower cost to operate, but also better for our healthier air and a healthier environment for our kids. Here today to join us in this announcement, I'm so excited that we have Representative Pat Dillon, who's an amazing representative for New Haven and a member of the Environment Committee, as well as Mayor Justin Elicker. Mayor Elicker, would you like to say a few words?
Thanks, Commissioner. Hi, everyone. Welcome to New Haven. For those folks that aren't from here, so excited that the governor and his team and Commissioner Dykes have chosen this location of A1 Toyota and New Haven to celebrate. It is just remarkable the number of times we have celebrated initiatives that have been embraced not only by our team here. I saw Sandeep Ayasola from Department of Transportation, Traffic and Parking here. I saw Steve Winter from our new Director of Climate Change. I saw Laura Kahn, that's an advocate in our community as well for environmental issues. But the governor's team and our team, what's important here is we're all rowing, or should I say driving, in the same direction, right? And you don't see that in many, many other states. The fact that we are making incredible progress, we've announced the bus rapid transit system that will increase options for people to use public transit and decrease the likelihood that people have to rely on a car. We've announced in New Haven the significant investment in e-bikes that the state has embraced. We've also announced our creation of a climate office and the work that we're doing. We're actually going to buy, we're waiting for the delivery of the first electric trash truck in New Haven that will come later on this year. We're purchasing a couple of police vehicles that are fully electric because we want to lean into this. And the fact that we are doing this together, we have bipartisan support. Senator Wong, really admire you for stepping up and embracing these environmental issues and climate initiatives as well. My wife and I purchased an electric vehicle. The incentives are just incredible and make it so much more affordable to everyone. And I want to finish by saying it's not just appropriate that we're here at A1 Toyota because of the work that they're doing in electric vehicles, but do you remember back in the day, the commercial, oh, what a feeling, and everyone kind of jumps in the air because they're so excited about Toyotas? Well, I'm probably not going to get this group to jump in the air, but I know that metaphorically they're jumping in the air because they're so excited that Connecticut is taking a real leadership position to ensure that we're passing on a world to our children that is sustainable, that is healthy, and that is beautiful. Thank you, Governor Lamont and Commissioner Dykes, for your leadership here.
It is really exciting to see Connecticut taking this leadership step, and I want to note that we are so thrilled because we're not doing it alone. In adopting these regulations, of course, we're following on the standards that California has put in place, and we're doing so in concert with our neighboring states, including New York, New Jersey, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, all around the region. We're working together with other states to be able to move these regulations forward, and that will open up a much broader market for EVs in the Northeast. And of course, we could not do that here in Connecticut without the authorization that we received from the Connecticut General Assembly. And I just want to know that the strong history here of bipartisan support for adopting clean transportation options. The regulations that we'll be moving forward to achieve 100% emission-free vehicles by 2035 for passenger vehicles is under authority that passed many years ago on a bipartisan basis, and we've been moving forward and making progress in following the California standards for passenger vehicles under that legislation for several years. But the medium and heavy duty standards that we're moving forward for the first time this year we're doing that under authority that was provided under the Connecticut Clean Air Act, the public act that passed in 2022 and which Governor Lamont signed right here in New Haven. That legislation was the product of tremendous collaborative effort between the Environment Committee and the Transportation Committee. I know Representative Joe Gresco was able to join us today from the Environment Committee, but he worked tirelessly with other colleagues in the legislature to help move this forward. And I'm so thrilled that we have strong representation from the Transportation Committee here to talk about this effort, which is a true partnership between the legislature and the executive branch. So first I'll welcome Senator Christine Cohen, to the current co-chair of the Transportation Committee and co-chair emeritus of the Environment Committee, to say a few words, and then followed by her other Transportation Committee leadership colleagues.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Commissioner Dykes, and thank you, Justin Elliker, for welcoming us into your city. And it's so funny that you were mentioning jingles, because the whole time I'm standing here, I'm thinking, A1 Toyota, you get an A1 deal. And that's clear that we are getting some great deals. See those jingles stick in your head. They work. But so grateful to have you welcome us in to your place of business today. This is a notably massive collaboration, and I'm not just talking about between states, which we heard about from Commissioner Dykes, and public officials who've been named. I'm talking about a worldwide collaboration. If you look at this and open up any paper or do a Google search to figure out what's happening as we transition from combustible vehicles, you'll see that the entire world is jumping on board. The EU, the UK, India. We are talking about worldwide collaboration, and there's a widespread recognition between manufacturers, consumers, and all of these countries, all of our states, public officials, that we need to do something to mitigate the impacts of climate change. And that is exactly what we're doing by tackling the largest source of carbon emissions. Transportation is that source, and we're doing what we can here to achieve carbon neutrality. We're not even talking about reversing the clock here, because unfortunately it's a little too late for that. We're talking about saving the planet for future generations to come. This is a really big deal, and so I do think it's a notably massive collaboration with everybody across the globe. And I'm really proud to live in a state and represent folks in a state that takes this so very seriously. I'm so grateful to Commissioner Dykes, Commissioner Eucalito, the whole DOT and DEP teams, and especially Governor Lamont, who has made this a priority for his administration, making sure that we're tackling climate change head on, doing what we can to mitigate those impacts. As we sit here on a day that is climbing temperatures, we're talking about a heat wave this week. We just heard about flooding. These are things that are becoming more and more common, the smoke coming down from Canada. So we're living in scary times, and it requires us to take drastic measures. That's exactly what the legislature did last year by adopting SB4, Connecticut's Clean Air Act, making sure that DEP could adopt California's emission standards for medium and heavy duty vehicles, like we had done for light duty vehicles, and making sure that we're responding to not only consumers who want to do the right thing, who want to get themselves an alternative fuel, cars, electric vehicles, but also to businesses. We're hearing from businesses more and more that they want to turn over their fleets, not only because of the environmental impacts, that they want to have a good impact on the environment, but because of and the long-term cost savings. And we're making it easier in the state of Connecticut for businesses to go that route. So again, just really incredibly proud to be here. I see so many advocates out there who work tirelessly on this with us, and I'm sure celebrating inside, but knowing there's so much more to be done. Also grateful for my partners in the legislature who worked really hard with all of us, you know, round the table, round the clock to make sure that we could pass these important policies that truly will save the planet. Thanks so much.
Next, I'd like to introduce Representative Roland Lamar, co-chair of the Transportation Committee.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Mayor Elicker, for welcoming us here today. Yes, the jingles worked. They worked on me. My car's parked out front, which I purchased here at Toyota A1 4 years ago. It's a hybrid vehicle, so I'm almost ready for the full upgrade soon, and I'm looking forward to coming here to purchase it. We know what's happening. Increased number of days when children in New Haven can't open the windows in their homes because they're concerned about the air quality outside. Increased number of days missed from school. Increased number of visits to the emergency room. Standing next to me in the back is our health director, Maritza Bond, who I hope folks talk to after we leave here today to just kind of get a sense for what's happening day to day on the ground in our city and really across the country. My good Senate colleague, Senator Cohen, mentioned it may already be too late to prevent some of the worst consequences of climate change. But it's not too late to make sure that our next generation of people have cleaner air, that we address the fundamental issue that's driving these negative air quality days. The transportation sector itself is chiefly responsible here in Connecticut. That's the thing that we can control. And what we're doing today is what responsibility looks like. Taking a leadership role, saying we can create new standards in Connecticut. We can improve the air quality for the children of our communities. We can make sure that fewer kids are going to the emergency room, that more kids can safely get on a school bus, go to school, and not worry about diesel exhaust, that more children can get on a bus and go to after-school activities, that each and every one of us who live generally in some of our most disadvantaged communities have air quality that we know won't make us sick. That's what responsibility looks like. And so we talk about California air emission standards. We talk about a number of states who are jumping on board. We talk about electric vehicles. We talk about the things that we need to do. And it's all in service of one thing: making sure that our air quality is healthier, that our environment is healthier, that we're not leaving a city, a state, a nation, a world in worse condition than what we found it. These are hard choices. Sometimes they're politically controversial. In other states, you're having these battles across their legislatures and in their governments. But here in New Haven, here in Connecticut, we have leadership that says, let's embrace that challenge. Let's demand a better future. And let's take the actions we need to take. So I'm so proud to be joined by the people behind me who on a bipartisan level in environment committees and transportation committees, but in the governor's office itself, said, let's take a leadership role. I'm proud of the advocates who've pushed us to this point, who've demanded better out of us on a day-to-day basis, and I'm proud of the steps that we've taken as a state. And hopefully, if we move fast enough, more and more children in our community will be able to safely go outside, breathe the air, open their windows, and go to school in a healthy environment. So thank you all for getting us to this point.
Next, I'd like to introduce Ranking Member from the Transportation Committee, Senator Tony Wong.
Thank you, Commissioner Dykes. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the hard-working department staff that are present, the environmental advocates, but also the proud employees. We've already plugged in. We're not plugging again, right? But I think it's important to note that clean air and environmental sustainability is not a partisan issue. And I think it's important to note that because public health and an economic initiative to be able to create a better world can be done. And I think what we have seen in regards to the rapid development and innovation in EV vehicles, even in the past 5-10 years, has been remarkable. And I know Toyota just came out with an announcement that you're going to have a 900-mile range battery that will charge in 10 minutes. This is what is needed, not only from a legislative policy as we have undertaken here today, but it needs the innovation and the entrepreneurialism of businesses and original manufacturers to know that it is a good business decision. And I think it's important when we look at developing this program under DEEP that we consider the other states surrounding us that are undertaking the same initiative. We can't do this alone as Connecticut because it will create an economic disadvantage. To be able to have a regional collaborative where we can all work together toward a common goal, which is worthy, is critical in this policy initiative. But I think the bottom line is that we have an important social responsibility to ensure that we leave this earth a little bit better when we leave for future generations. And ultimately, as we have seen in the severe weather that causes economic damage, but also what we saw in Canada and the wildfire that impacts all of us on a public health basis, clean air is critical, and it is a nonpartisan issue. So I'm proud to stand here and move us forward as a state, but also as leaders in creating a better world for all of us to live. And I want to thank the governor for his leadership, but ultimately, it takes a village, and we have a great village creating this initiative. Let's keep it going forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Senator. And I want to introduce Representative Kathy Kennedy, who's also ranking member on the Transportation Committee, to say a few words. Oh, sorry. And Representative Dillon, I realized I passed over you in case you had anything you wanted to add from New Haven perspective.
I just want to thank you all for being here. I bought my car here, and I think being one of the asthma capitals of the world was not a prize that we were trying to win. This is going to be a long slog. This area right here, small homes, homeowners, overwhelmingly people of color. We were weeks ago with the governor, and thank you so much, Governor, for everything that you have done and for being here today. The governor came to the other end of the 92nd District to talk about tree canopies in the hill. This is really going to have to be done block by block. People are sometimes scared of big interventions, and it's a heavy lift. We all agree on the problem. It's the solution we have to work on. Thank you so much for being here today.
As we're celebrating our legislative partnerships and wins, I also want to note other parts of the Connecticut Clean Air Act, in addition to authorizing us to move these regulations forward, also authorize additional funding so that we can provide for more grants and supports to lower the cost of vehicle purchasing across the state. So we now will be able to provide our popular cheaper rebates to businesses thanks to the Connecticut Clean Air Act. We now will be able to provide vouchers to lower the cost of purchasing clean, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles thanks to the Connecticut Clean Air Act. These are really important tools that are helping lower the purchase price for electric vehicles. But it's really important to note that electric vehicles have lower operating and maintenance costs, lower fuel costs and lower maintenance costs than traditional internal combustion engine vehicles. And we see that the total cost of ownership over 10 years is roughly $4,200 lower than traditional internal combustion engine vehicles because of those savings on maintenance and so on. The Public Utilities Regulatory Authority has moved forward an exciting program with our utilities to help make it even more affordable for you to install chargers at home. So that's a program to get involved in. And of course, our popular cheaper rebate program is available cash on the head, and that coupled with more generous tax credits from the Inflation Reduction Act has made it even more affordable than ever to purchase an electric vehicle. So we're really proud of those other elements of the Connecticut Clean Air Act that are included. I want to say, as I look out into this audience, and I know we have several folks here, there are so many advocates that engaged with the legislature and with the department to help get us to this day. I'm really excited to invite one of them, Michelle Ekman, who's the Associate Director of the Connecticut Climate and Jobs Roundtable, to say a few words.
Thank you, Commissioner Dykes, for inviting the Connecticut Roundtable on Climate and Jobs to speak. We are advocates for all of this really amazing and very important work. Thank you so much, Governor, as well. This is all really great steps, but we are in a climate crisis. I don't use the word climate change. It is a crisis. This event got rescheduled because of torrential rains a week or two ago. So we are feeling it now. It's not a future problem, it's now. And while these are all really great steps, there's so much more that needs to be done. We need aggressive, I'm going to emphasize aggressive regulations if we have a chance of meeting the state's 2040 carbon emissions goals. And we're already behind. So we need things that have already been discussed today. And some of the things, I think part of it is we need to market these incentives better. We need people in our state to know that they even exist, because I think a lot of people don't know about programs like Cheaper and so forth that they can avail themselves of. But obviously we need a really expansive EV charging station infrastructure, electric buses across the board in our cities, towns, and all of our public schools. We need to end procurement of diesel vehicles. We need let's go back to free public transportation that has expanded routes so we can get around our state more easily. We don't need to rely upon our cars as much. And those incentives for low-income residents to buy those EVs, they exist, but we need to get the word out so they understand. Some of these policies may seem extreme, but we need extreme if we're going to pass on that quality of air that is just a survival, or just be able to maintain a high quality of life that we want for our future generations. So thanks for the time. I really appreciate it.
Save the Sound is another organization that has been tireless and working with a whole coalition of environmental advocates to help get us to this day, and I'm glad to invite Charles Rothenberger to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Great to see so much support here. And while the announcement of these regulations in this event is very exciting, I would say these regulations are really more evolutionary than revolutionary. This builds on a foundation of Connecticut's leadership in this space over 2 decades of successfully implementing the more health protective California motor vehicle emission standards. And we refer to them as the California standards as sort of a shorthand. They are the only state that is unilaterally authorized to create their own standards, but the federal government, the Clean Air Act, expressly allows other states to join those California standards, to opt for standards that improve public health, are better for the economy. And what we're seeing is that Connecticut, Massachusetts, New York, a dozen other states around the country that do partner with California on these standards, it really is a partnership. People will say we should not let another state dictate what we're doing in Connecticut. That is not how it works. Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts, all of these states are at the table helping in the development of these regulations, taking into account local peculiarities and circumstances. So we could easily refer to these as the Connecticut standards just as much as the California standards, because we help shape and create them, and we will achieve the benefits. And the benefits are real. I think several other people alluded, there is a real cost to inaction here. And across every metric, whether it's improvements in public health, reduced expenditures because of adverse public health experiences, improved economic conditions. Every metric, these regulations will help improve the health, the environment, and the quality of life for people here in Connecticut. So I'm so pleased to be part of this effort and to see these regulations moving forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Charles, and thank you to all the advocates and champions who helped get us to this day. And I want to next and finally welcome to the podium an amazing champion for the environment, for environmental justice, for clean air, clean transportation, and working on a bipartisan basis and with all of our other states to move forward with climate action. And that person is Governor Ned Lamont.
right, let me summarize what I've heard. Pretty good day to go out and buy an electric vehicle. This is the time to do it. Right there, right next to you. Let's show people what it is. It's the right thing to do. It's the smart thing to do. It's never been more affordable than it is today. And by the way, you're also saving the world. I just want to back up for a second. Roland reminded me that we were here 2 years ago announcing some of these initiatives. And I see the placard over here, Climate Action Now, but also for tomorrow, and stick to it. Too often in politics, we have the press and we have the release and we check the box and we move on. And not when it comes to what we've got to do when it comes to climate in this state. So in the last 2 years, I think you've heard we have made a lot of progress. We're going to be back here again 2 years from now and show more progress as well. Number one, you heard that it's not just California and Connecticut. It's New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, other states taking the lead here. I'm tired of people saying, oh, let's wait until West Virginia comes on board. Let's wait and see what China wants to do. We can't do it by ourselves. We can't do it by ourselves. We can take the lead. And Connecticut is taking the lead. And we'll continue to take the lead. I think we're doing it smart. I mean, it takes time. We're going to have, I don't want any of you suffering from any range anxiety. I know that can be very stressful. And we're going to have tens of millions of dollars a year for the next 5 years on our major arteries, thanks to the infrastructure bill, and also our state and local roads, making sure that it's easier for you to get that charge. And as Tony said, maybe that charge is going to be good for 900 miles someday. I'd love to see it. Finally, for some people to say, oh, man, we're moving too fast, you can't mandate this and let the market determine it. I've had occasion to talk to the auto guys, and I said, look, is what we're doing setting a clear goal, 2035, all electric? Is this moving us too fast? Is this practical? I don't want to do things that are symbolic. And they say, keep your pedal to the metal. And by that I mean make sure we have a clear idea that Connecticut is not alone. It's going to be one of the states where it's all electric 2035. That makes it easier for us to design and build and make sure we are building the all-electric vehicles for the future. You know what that means? That means scale. That means more vehicles being built, more people buying these, driving down the cost, making it more economical for each and every one of you. So it's the right thing to do. It's the smart thing to do, and I think Connecticut's getting it right. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you, Governor, and we're really excited about this progress. The notice is out, so we're excited to hear public comments on the regulatory package, and our hope is that we'll be able to move it forward back to the Legislative Regs Review Committee by the end of the year, so that we'll be in a place to have these regs implemented for the 2027 model year. And with that, happy to take any questions that folks may have.
Can someone spell out the differences between passenger vehicles versus medium and heavy duty for individuals? For instance, someone with an entry-level SUV might not have any idea which category they fall in.
That would be a passenger vehicle, but
what are the standards for each of those categories?
Sure. Yeah, and I'm happy to welcome members of my team here who can speak vehicle classes, but essentially for the medium and heavy duty vehicles, we have a range of different classes. So that would be, your box trucks up to your, buses and so on and so forth. But passenger vehicles, I'll have to circle back. I can give you a more precise definition for that.
But in terms of what does that mean for both of those? Because their standards aren't the same. What are the standards?
Right. Here we go. Paul Farrell. Differences between passenger vehicle. What's our definition of passenger vehicle, light duty vehicle? Come on up to this pit, Mike. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Paul Farrell. I'm the acting chief of the Bureau of Air Management at DEEP. We're the group that created these regulations. So the question again was the difference.
What's the definition of a passenger vehicle? How do you use the SUV a passenger vehicle, for example?
It's weight-based. Okay, so up to 7,500 pounds is a light-duty vehicle. So it's interesting as we get into the pickup trucks and the heavier trucks, as you add battery weight to them, some of those trucks actually may transition from light-duty to medium-duty vehicle.
Katie, can you put in practical terms of what people will see in the 2027 model year? So there were goals set in 2022. department has been developing these regulations to implement them. So, practical matter, what will happen in 2027?
You guys want to speak to that? It's similar to our renewable portfolio standard. It's like an increasing share of new vehicle sales that manufacturers will be. These regulations apply to manufacturers, not to consumers directly. So we will be joining with a number of other states in adopting standards that will require manufacturers to ensure that an increasing percentage of the vehicles that they are offering for sale meet these emission standards or are all electric or clean transportation options. It gets more complicated to go into in levels of detail because there's lots of different flexibility mechanisms for how the manufacturers can comply with that across all of their fleets. But that's the basics, is that starting with the 2027 model year, we'll be joining into the program along with other states who have adopted these more stringent standards so that share of clean of vehicles that meet those emission standards will be increasing each year up to 2035, where at that point it'll be 100%.
And what do you anticipate that will be the result? Do you expect a broader range of offerings on EVs? Is that the idea?
Exactly. What we expect is that will mean that a consumer here in Connecticut coming in to purchase a vehicle and looking at model year 2027 will see that there are more electric vehicle options being offered, and we're expecting more different types of models. We're thinking about not just sedans but minivans, trucks. We're going to see more manufacturers offering different types of models that are meeting these standards as the standards increase.
Because Connecticut has already, as you mentioned, passed these laws saying we're following the California standards, this step has pretty much been expected since California announced these new standards several years ago. Can you talk about what level of collaboration you've had since then with these other states, Rhode Island, New Jersey, New York, you mentioned, in terms of drafting these regulations to go forward and taking that step that was required by law?
Right. So for what you're referring to is the legislation that authorized Connecticut to adopt the light-duty vehicle standards for California, which was enacted many years ago. The step that we're taking now is updating our regulations to adopt the more recent update that California did in 2021 for passenger vehicles. We work very closely with all of the states that are part of this ZEV MOU that are following the California program. So we're comparing notes and working together not only in developing comments and engaging with California through CARB. They have their whole regulatory adoption process they do in California, and our states participate in that and give input to California on their program and what they're adopting. But in addition, we're also closely coordinating with our sister states on other policies and mechanisms that are complementary, such as how we're delivering rebates and incentives, how we're helping support EV charger build out, or even how we're planning for our grid to be able to accommodate all these new vehicles that are going to be plugging in. So it's a very strong and long-standing collaboration.
Is it fair to say at this point the expectation that these steadily increasing standards will be done in lockstep, so that you're not going to see, for example, California, Connecticut institute some type of regulation 27, Rhode Island following a year behind or something like that?
I mean, that's our goal with adopting this year, and and hoping to work through this process to get the regs review approval by the end of the year, is so that we'll have a smooth transition to join or have the updated California passenger vehicle standards in place by the model year 2027. Adopting earlier smooths that transition to the 100%. But of course, working collaboratively with the other states is really important. We don't want to have a whole, patchwork of different standards in different states. Our goal is we're working in lockstep with the manufacturers and with the market. We know manufacturers are adopting, they're setting these goals for themselves that they want to achieve 100% electric by certain dates in 2030s. If you pick different manufacturers, they've made different commitments. They want to know that, they're going to have support on the regulatory side for those goals that they're setting, so there will be demand for these vehicles. And so that's why we're, working with all these other states is so important, because we're creating one kind of unified and coherent market that's moving, at a steady pace in lockstep with these the manufacturers' commitments.
What is the status of the build-out of the charging network?
So I know we have a lot of federal funding. I don't want to put you on this. I know.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm happy to put you on the spot, but I'll get your work.
built out?
Well, we're in the planning stages for that now, so that's something we can get you more specific information on. But I do know that the NEVI funding that I spoke to is going to be essential to us looking at the major corridors and identifying where to place the chargers so that there could be a robust network, so that range anxiety we heard about won't be something we have to worry about.
Okay, but the people who are going to read and watch these stories are going to want an idea of when can they see those chargers installed?
We will follow up with you on.
I will just say, and speaking with Commissioner Eucalito, there's an intention to have a rough plan by the end of this year, and then implementation would be start next year. So.
And that will include chargers that you'll see, out in the wild to address range anxiety along our transportation corridors. So if you're on a longer trip, you need to charge midway, right? The NEVI funding will help to fill in some of those gaps to provide reliable access and convenient access across those transportation corridors. But right now, you can go on and sign up for an incentive to install a charger at home. Really important for folks to realize that charging an EV is a lot different from fueling at the gas station. It's more like charging your iPhone, which I'm terrible at doing this myself, but you want to plug in it overnight, right? And top up your battery overnight. And that way you'll have a full charge ready to drive the next day. We really promote at-home charging, and overnight charging is one of the most efficient ways to keep vehicles fueled. And so the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, I believe about 2 years ago, gave the green light to our utilities to offer up to $1,000 of incentives for folks who install chargers at home. And so that incentive is available today and has been fairly popular.
There's an obvious tension at these events between the happy thoughts of the elected officials about what you've accomplished and our advocates who each began their comments with, while this is good. So can you address that tension as to what is next on the to-do list in Connecticut after the General Assembly? This was not the greatest session on this stuff. Basically, you're celebrating 2022. So go ahead. What's at the top of the list of things that should be done? Governor, I'd like you to address that as well. What is the administration going to be pushing in the coming session on climate change, resilience, and so forth?
I mean, I'll just say that we were really proud with the governor's, the Lamont administration introduced legislation such as Senate Bill 1145 that would have authorized Connecticut DEEP to establish subsector targets for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and provided our department with broader regulatory authority similar to what other states in the region have to enact regulations, to the further regulations we need to decarbonize our economy. We know the building sector, for example, is one of those that's stubbornly continues to be a major contributor. We haven't seen a lot of reductions occurring there. Transportation with the 40% level of GHG emissions. I mean, these measures that we're moving forward for the Connecticut Clean Air Act are huge for helping to reduce emissions from our vehicles. The Department of Transportation has established that 5% target for vehicle miles traveled reductions, and we're excited to think about what complementary mechanisms we can do to help reduce the amount of vehicle miles traveled. While we've seen fuel economy improve over time, our emissions are not coming down because we're driving more. So we have to both improve fuel economy or clean up the emissions from the vehicles, but also provide for more transit-oriented development, for more types of pedestrian and biking options that will help us to reduce, provide other options for transportation that reduce vehicle miles traveled. Our cheaper e-bike rebate, for example, is helping with that. That's been really popular. So, it's a long list because climate change is accelerating. We're making major transformations across our economy. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to continue to dialogue with the legislature. We've talked about doing a roadmap. There was a roadmap bill that was discussed, and I think we have the authority to work on roadmaps even independent of legislation, and that could identify additional measures that we could move forward that will be impactful to bend the curve on emission reductions, and some of which would require legislative authority. I think today's example of moving forward with a regulatory tool demonstrates why it's so important to have regulatory authority to move forward the types of programs that our other sister states are doing to reduce emissions, provide cleaner options for consumers. And I'm hopeful that we can continue the discussion with the legislature about providing more of that regulatory authorization in other sectors that we'll need in order to meet the targets the legislature has set for GHG emission reductions. That was a lot, but there's something in there for you, Paz.
I tried to coach the governor there because I knew he would give me a shorter answer. But
No doubt.
Look, we're making good progress on transportation, which is the biggest source of greenhouse emissions that we can control right now. Secondly, I've got to think long and hard about carbon-free power going forward. We've made some progress on hydro recently. Obviously, we got the wind kicking in the next 24 months. Talking to nuclear, trying to find ways we can continue to have the power we need to keep our all-electric fleet going. And probably my biggest disappointment this last session, I'll need help from the legislature, is what we do about recycling. We can't keep sending all of our waste out of state to landfills. That's not our future. It costs our people a fortune. It's not the environmental right thing to do. So we've got good progress on plastics and bottles. So we've added on tires. I think we're going to look hard, working with our neighboring states to do more on the packaging side as well. That's my next priority.
so what's your latest thinking on nuclear? There was some controversy over the administration's bill about how it would be categorized as far as renewables, what not. Realistically, what are the chances of not just maintaining the current nuclear capacity, but expanding it?
We're in discussions right now. Let me get back to you.
With Dominion or somebody else?
Everybody. It's a source of always-on carbon-free power that we can control, not subject to what's going on in Russia and Ukraine.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Well done.
This is great.